Some people don't kill themselves, not because they're hopeful, but because they're too tired to try. That's the line nobody says out loud. You go to work, you pay your bills, you smile in photos, but something inside is rotting quietly. It's not depression in the clinical sense. It's something colder, deeper, harder to name. A hollow behind your ribs that you decorate with distractions, achievements, or spiritual band-aids. You keep going because stopping feels worse. Emil Cioran called this the curse of consciousness, and he wasn't exaggerating. He believed life wasn't tragic. Tragedy has meaning. Life, in his words, is a dirty joke, not just because it ends, but because it never really starts in a way that makes sense. You're thrown into the world without asking, shaped by trauma you don't deserve, expected to survive in a system no one understands, and then one day, without warning, you vanish. No applause, no credits, just darkness. This isn't philosophy for classrooms. This is the unspoken script behind your sleepless nights, the quiet despair of traffic jams, dead-end jobs, aging parents, ungrateful children, and dreams that shrink with every birthday. Cioran's work was banned in communist Romania, not because it was violent, but because it was true. Dangerous truth, the kind that makes you question the entire architecture of hope. And yet, here's the twist. He kept writing. He kept breathing, laughing even. Why? That's what this video is about. Not just death or nihilism or suffering, but the absurd fact that we keep showing up, that we make jokes, fall in love, binge-watch shows, and plan vacations in a universe that couldn't care less if we lived or died. This is not a call for despair. It's an autopsy of illusion. And maybe, just maybe, what comes after is something freer, darker, and strangely beautiful. If you're still watching, congratulations. Your delusions are cracking. Let's go deeper. The universe doesn't care that you exist, and the tragedy is that you do. If you were a stone, a tree, a mosquito, none of this would matter. But you're not. You're human, which means you wake up every day knowing you're going to die, and worse, knowing you know it. That's the curse. Cioran once wrote, "Only one thing matters: learning to be the loser." He wasn't promoting weakness. He was describing lucidity. The moment you become fully conscious of what it means to be alive, you're already at war with life itself. Your intelligence is a weapon turned inward. No animal drowns in regret. No plant prays to be forgiven. But you carry decades of what-ifs and never wers like they're tattoos on your soul. Not because they help, but because forgetting is a skill evolution forgot to give us. What Cioran understood, and most thinkers avoid, is that awareness is a mistake. Not metaphorically, biologically. We weren't built to withstand the weight of knowing everything ends, that nothing satisfies for long, that every high is followed by a crash we still sign up for. Walk into any city at rush hour and look around. Thousands of people dragging themselves through tasks they hate, in lives they didn't choose, thinking thoughts they wish they could unthink. They're not lazy, they're awake. They've seen behind the curtain, and now every day is performance art under fluorescent lights. And here's where it gets cruel. The more aware you are, the worse it gets. You read more, reflect more, feel more. You start to question the rituals. Why do I work? Why do I want love? Why do I fear boredom more than pain? And underneath every answer lies another hollow echo. Cioran again. It is not worth the bother of killing yourself, since you always kill yourself too late. That line hurts because it's not nihilism. It's precision. It names the daily suicide we commit with routines, with compromises, with polite silences. We die in small pieces, perfectly scheduled. Neuroscience backs this in disturbing detail. Studies on the default mode network show that our brains, left alone, spiral into anxiety and self-critique. The price of awareness is rumination, the endless churning of thought that isolates us from peace. Thought in excess doesn't liberate, it tortures. Thinkers like Nietzsche flirted with this edge, but Cioran dove headfirst. He wasn't trying to fix the human condition. He was writing its obituary and doing it beautifully. And yet here's the paradox. Cioran kept thinking. He kept observing the absurd, peeling it apart with a philosopher's scalpel. Not to save us, but maybe to say, if we're cursed to be conscious, let's at least be honest. Because once you admit that awareness is a prison, you might start looking at the walls differently. You stop searching for exits that don't exist, and something in you, quietly, cruelly, relaxes. You're not broken, you're just awake. No one asks to be born, and yet everyone pays the price. There's no consent form, no orientation. One day you're nothing, the next you're thrown screaming into a world that's already broken. And the irony? The crime already happened. Birth is the sentence. Cioran didn't romanticize beginnings. He dissected them. He called birth a blunder, a failure of the will not to be. In his eyes, to be born is to be thrown into a nightmare you're forced to make sense of, surrounded by people who pretend they know what they're doing. And most terrifying of all, they'll call it a blessing. The language of life is rigged from the start. Miracle, purpose, destiny. These are the words of those already too deep in the game to admit it makes no sense. And so we continue the cycle. We reproduce not out of clarity, but confusion. Not out of joy, but biology dressed up as meaning. Cioran asked, brutally and without apology, is there anything more absurd than a being confronted with its own birth? He wasn't alone. Schopenhauer saw life as a mistake that keeps reproducing itself. David Benatar called birth a harm, a net loss in the balance sheet of pain and pleasure. These aren't provocations, they're cold audits of reality. Look around. What do newborns inherit today? Crushed economies, melting glaciers, surveillance states, empty ideologies, and a culture of burnout sold as ambition. Even the lucky ones, the ones born into safety, privilege, and comfort, aren't spared the slow corrosion of time, illness, disappointment, and death. They just fall slower. This isn't drama, it's data. The World Health Organization reports that suicide is among the leading causes of death in people aged 15 to 29. How does a species so enamored with life lose its will to live before it even fully begins? Because existence is not neutral. It's loaded with pressures, fears, absurd responsibilities, and no clear reason why any of it matters. And yet, society criminalizes the only real rejection of birth. The refusal to participate. Antinatalists are mocked. Suicidality is pathologized. Mothers who regret motherhood are demonized. Because if people start questioning the very premise, the whole thing unravels. Cioran wrote, "To want children is to agree to populate hell." It's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the recognition that bringing a life into this world is not just a biological act. It's a metaphysical gamble, made on behalf of someone else who never asked to play. And still, the hospital rooms stay full. The baby showers keep happening. We continue producing souls like assembly line products, hoping the next one will feel differently about the whole thing. But something deep down knows. Birth is not the beginning of life. It's the beginning of damage control. So we cope, we rationalize. We fill the silence with stories about purpose and legacy and love. And sometimes, they work. Sometimes the joke lands softly. But under all of it, the question remains, what are we really celebrating when we celebrate birth, creation, or captivity? Pain doesn't build character, it just burns, and most of us are already ash. Let's kill the lie early. Suffering does not purify. It doesn't make you wiser or stronger or more deserving of peace. It just happens, brutally, randomly, endlessly. People endure horrors and come out not enlightened, but broken, or worse, numb. Cioran wrote, "We are all deep in a hell, each moment of which is a miracle. Not miracle as in divine gift, but miracle as in absurd survival. A freak act of endurance with no applause." Why does pain persist so fiercely in a species so desperate to escape it? Evolution has no interest in your happiness, only in your functionality. And so, we adapt not to joy, but to pressure. We don't grow, we harden. And what doesn't kill us often doesn't leave anything worth saving. There's this idea, modern, popular, that trauma gives people depth, that scars are noble, that if you just reframe your suffering correctly, it becomes a source of wisdom. But tell that to the parent whose child died for no reason. Tell that to the victim of war, abuse, illness, people whose suffering serves no narrative, only the quiet grinding down of the soul. This isn't pessimism, it's math. Look at the world. 700 million people live in extreme poverty. Every year, 10 million die from cancer. Millions more are enslaved, trafficked, imprisoned, forgotten. And for most of them, no redemptive arc is coming, no lesson, just pain, then silence. Cioran didn't flinch from this. He rejected the romanticization of suffering that religions and philosophies cling to. He saw it for what it was, the default state of existence. He wrote, "To live is to lose ground." And he meant every kind of ground, physical, psychological, emotional. You're not gaining wisdom, you're just surviving damage in slow motion and calling it growth because the alternative is unbearable. Even science confirms it. Studies on chronic trauma show that prolonged suffering doesn't necessarily build resilience. Often, it fractures identity, rewires cognition, reduces empathy, increases paranoia. What's left is not a deeper person, just a damaged one pretending to be functional. But we don't talk about that. Society needs suffering to be meaningful so people don't revolt. Workplaces frame burnout as dedication. Religions frame pain as a divine test. Even therapists try to help you reframe your trauma, as if clarity will undo what happened. Cioran refused that game. He said brutally, "Only optimists commit suicide. The others are too weak to make the gesture." Not because he praised despair, but because he saw how deeply we lie to avoid it. So why go on? That's the paradox. We suffer, and yet we persist. Maybe not out of strength, but inertia. Maybe not out of hope, but fear. Maybe, just maybe, because suffering, as senseless as it is, becomes a companion we're too familiar with to abandon. And in that recognition, there's a strange freedom. Because when you stop needing pain to be meaningful, you stop needing life to justify itself. And in that silence, for the first time, something like peace begins. Not joy, not salvation, just the absence of illusion. We invented the future to distract ourselves from the present and called it hope. There is no lie more polished, more deeply embedded in modern consciousness than the myth of progress. We cling to it like a drug, the idea that tomorrow will redeem today, that humanity is headed somewhere brighter, cleaner, more humane, that all our suffering is part of some vast upward curve. Cioran saw through it. He wrote, "Progress is the injustice each generation commits with regard to its predecessors. Because it doesn't lift, it buries. It buries memory, consequence, depth. It buries the past in favor of momentum. And what we call advancement is often nothing more than refined barbarism, violence in better packaging. We've conquered nature only to enslave ourselves to systems we can't escape. We built machines to save time, then filled that time with more obligations. We digitized everything, and yet we've never been lonelier. Progress gave us antibiotics and nuclear weapons. It gave us instant communication and mass surveillance. It gave us access to all knowledge and drowned us in noise. This is not balance, it's a joke. And the punchline is that we still believe we're evolving. Cioran described modern man as a sick animal who mistakes restlessness for vitality. He understood that our obsession with improvement masks a deeper panic, the fear that nothing we build can outpace the meaninglessness that shadows us. That fear drives everything: our worship of technology, our fetish for innovation, our hunger for growth. But growth into what? The World Bank celebrates economic expansions while mental health statistics collapse. Corporations flaunt progress reports while the planet suffocates. This is not progress, it's escalation. It's the amplification of absurdity under the banner of optimism. Science doesn't escape this either. For every medical breakthrough, there's a new syndrome. For every life extended, a new form of existential decay. Longevity without meaning is just a longer prison sentence. Cioran mocked the idea of utopia. Utopia is the grotesque enshrinement of our disgust with the real. And he was right. We build futures not to arrive in them, but to avoid looking at what we are now. A species still driven by fear, hunger, status, death, just with shinier tools. The cruelty of progress is that it doesn't solve suffering, it sophisticates it. And we become complicit, addicted to newness, obedient to trends, convinced that the next update will finally fix the ache we can't name. But the ache isn't in the world. It's in the architecture of existence. And no machine can rewrite that code. So what's left? Not regression, not revolution. Just the brutal honesty that forward is not always better. That speed is not salvation. That maybe, just maybe, the most radical act in a progressive culture is to stop and say, this isn't working. And in that stillness, something opens. Not an answer, but a refusal. A quiet rebellion against the illusion that movement equals meaning. When nothing makes sense, the most dangerous thing you can do is laugh. Not the polite kind, not the one you give at parties or corporate meetings. This laugh is deeper, wilder. It's the laugh that slips out when you've seen too much and feel too little. When you're face to face with the void, and instead of screaming, you smirk. Cioran called this the final freedom. To live is to lose the ability to be serious. After everything, the pain, the futility, the cruelty of progress, the failure of meaning, it's not despair that remains, it's absurdity. And in that absurdity, something cracks. You stop trying to win a game that was rigged from the start. And without that pressure, you start laughing. Not because it's funny, but because nothing else fits. This is not cynicism, it's lucidity. It's knowing that life doesn't need to be fixed or worshipped. It just needs to be exposed. The comedian who collapses backstage from a panic attack. The monk who spends decades in silence only to die with doubts. The millionaire who buys a third house and still can't sleep. They've all seen it. The joke. The punchline is not death. It's endurance. We keep going, not because we believe in anything, but because stopping feels just as meaningless as continuing. And in that stalemate, something feral in us laughs. Cioran wasn't interested in transcendence. He didn't offer salvation. He offered something sharper. The dignity of mockery, of looking at the grand machinery of existence, the gods, the systems, the promises, and laughing in its face like a prisoner who knows the walls won't ever move. Each time I hear a man speak of progress, I give him a penny for his soul. That line doesn't just insult optimism, it kills it. Because optimism for Cioran was a desperate hallucination. But laughter, dark, savage, conscious laughter, was honest. It said, "I see the rot, I see the lie, and I refuse to bow." It's why comedians so often walk the line between genius and collapse. Because when you see through the illusion, you either shatter or laugh. And sometimes the laughter is the only thing keeping you from the gun, the rope, the bottle, the fall. And yet, it's not hopeless, because to laugh is to claim the last word. Not to fix life, but to face it, naked, brutal, absurd, and say, "This is all you've got." In a world where everything dies, every dream fades, and every belief breaks, laughter is resistance, not against suffering, but against surrender. So you laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's true. And that truth, finally, sets nothing free, except maybe you. Life doesn't offer answers, it offers weight. And if you've made it to this point in the video, carrying that weight alongside these thoughts, then you already belong to a rare kind of mind. One that dares to look at existence not with blind optimism, but with raw, unfiltered truth. And for that, I'm grateful, truly. Just by watching, by staying, by thinking along with these words, you're already supporting this work in a way that matters. You're keeping the conversation alive in a world that prefers silence, distraction, and comfortable lies. That's no small thing. But if you feel like going further, if you want to help this channel not just survive but grow, you can become a member. Membership isn't just support, it's connection. It gives you access to exclusive content, early videos, deeper dives, and a closer seat at the table of everything we're building here. You'll be part of a space where thought still matters. And if becoming a member isn't possible right now, there's another way. The Super Thanks feature. It's a way to leave a one-time contribution, a gesture of appreciation that helps this content reach more people, and reminds me that these words matter to someone out there. But truly, no pressure. Watching, sharing, commenting, reflecting. That's already powerful support. You're part of this. And if this content has ever made you feel seen, understood, or even slightly less alone, then that's enough reason to keep going. Thank you for being here. And if you choose to stand even closer, welcome.